And the fundamental flaw is that if I keep having to giving more and more and more, and I can never give enough, and I never know if I'm in good standing or not. What's going on? What kind of cycle am I on? The Incan and the Aztec Indians, they would actually offer their firstborn children. The Incans had a process called capacocha, where they would actually wrap their firstborn child in swaddling clothes to the point that it was so tight that their child would be suffocated as they offered it to their gods. It even tells about the ancient Sumerian people, how that the priest becomes so devoted to their gods that they had nothing else to give. So they would actually cut and mutilate their arms and cause themselves to bleed and say, look how devoted I am to these forces. Look how devoted. I just want to find some love. I want to find peace in all this. Within this was the culture the Bible was written. You remember in Genesis chapter 12 when it says that God spoke to Abraham? Let's look at that. Genesis 12:1. Genesis 12:1 says, now the Lord had said unto Abraham, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house and to a land that I show thee. You have to understand how revolutionary this was to think that here in a culture where gods didn't communicate with people, that somehow this massive life force, this God, would communicate with man. You have to understand how mind-boggling and overwhelming it had to be for one of these so-called gods to come down and talk to you. And he said, get thee out of thy father's house. When we think father's house, we think direct TV and garage opener and couch and recliner and a bed and a pantry full of Pop-Tarts, all that kind of stuff. That's what we think when we think father's house. But what was different in Abraham's time is that a father's house symbolized, because your father was the one that taught you how to navigate this program, this process of trying to make these forces happy. At this time, we see temples rose up and priests become popular. People that were experts, and they began to build houses to this god and houses to this god. And there was a Babylonian god called Dagon, and they worshipped him. Then there was the sun god called Baal, and they worshipped him. And you had these priests that would teach you, if you would do it this way, or if you would do these 4 things and sacrifice this way and look this way, then you would make this god happy. And your father was the one who would say, well, if your livestock is sick, go to this god. If it's not raining, go to this God. And this God that's speaking to Abraham said, get thee out of thy father's house. He was saying, leave everything that you know fundamentally about how to worship, how to give, how to present offering. Leave everything behind. And the problem is, in Abraham's culture, everything was cyclical. In other words, their fathers believed that if they did what their fathers did, which was what their fathers did, that as they perpetuate this cycle, that things would work for them. So it was out of the box to think that Abraham could be the first generation to leave what had always worked for his family. If you actually go back and look in the ancient text and the Greek and Hebrew text, there's a song and a story that the Jewish rabbis tell today. And it talks about the night that Abraham left. And I find this amazing. Because it said that the night that Abraham left, because the Bible was first an oral tale. It was told before it was ever written. And there was an oral tale that was told. And the night Abraham left, he went into his father's household. And he went into the room that his fathers kept all of his gods and his figurines. And it said he took an axe in hand. And he went and he just started chopping away and smacking and ripping the marble apart. And he messed up all the gods. And he found the smallest god and he put the axe in the hands of the smallest god. And then stood back and smiled like this. And the next day his father comes in and says, what's happened? And Abraham says, well, it's obvious to me your little god has gotten mad and took care of the rest of the gods. And Abraham's father said there's no possible way, because these are only wooden idols. I made them myself. They're made of marble. They're made out of my own creation. And Abraham kind of looked back and said, well, then why do you bow down to them? And it was the first time in history that a God had ever communicated with man, and that man got the revelation of who God really was. He said, get thee out of thy father's house. So Abraham left the tradition of worshiping and offering the way that he had always known it. Verse 2, let's look at it today. And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. Verse 3 tells us today And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Hallelujah. I find this so amazing, because up to this point, the gods were known for being the type of force where they only wanted things out of you. And for the first time, here's the one true living God that says, before you give me anything, let me give something to you. And it messes up everything I've ever heard in my life about offering. Think of it, that there's a God that's not playing you like a lottery card to see what he can get out of you. But he says, I'm going to bless you and make your name great and make your seed so numerous across the earth that it'll be as the dust and the sands are, if you could number those. He said, I will make you great. And this is before Abraham ever gave an offering. I wish somebody would get happy about that. And if I just begin to address the particular subject, I can't, before I go on, I do have to compare, because it is a natural thing. If you plant a seed in the ground, guess what? Something grows, right? I can't deny the fact that you can sow and get a harvest back from that in some sense. And before you get mad, because that's really not where I'm going, because we're not looking for the harvest, right? We're looking for the inheritance. We're not looking for something that comes seasonal, but we're looking for something that comes and doesn't go. In other words, I'm looking for the wife that doesn't take out the trash, end up in Utah. I'm looking for someone that's going to stick with me. I'm looking for the job that when the promotion comes, I don't have someone that gets mad at me because I no longer kiss up to them like I used to, and because I no longer go along with every plan that decides to fire me. I'm looking for a job that stays. Is anybody with me at all? I'm looking for something that does not leave my life, the perpetual blessing that comes and does not go. So if you're basing your life trying to live in the blessing that will come and not go, and you're trying to give your way to doing it, you'll only get so far and get frustrated because you'll only experience seasonal victories. And if you're going to experience seasonal victories, can I just tell you how you're going to do it first? I got to add this in for free because this is not the main topic. In verse 3 it says, in blessing I will bless thee, in cursing I will curse thee. This might mess you up. But did you know that giving to need is not really where increase can come from? I know I made you mad because you see little kids in Africa and you think, if I send them an offering, I'll be blessed for that. Need is the responsibility of the church. We all should be hardwired by God to take care of the need in our life, right? God taught a principle to Abraham, saying, in blessing I will bless thee. Increase can only come when you sow into something that's blessed. I didn't get anything from that. This is the way it goes. Because if we stood up here and said, hey, we need to have raise $1,000 today because somebody's house burnt down, you would probably be digging down in the bottom of your purse and the very dark corners of your wallet where George Washington has to squint his eyes because he hasn't seen the daylight. And those things are good. We are responsible for those things. But if you're really looking to give and to get a blessing back, it doesn't work like that. No. Businessman, where are you? Are you going to invest your retirement fund into a company that for 7 years has done nothing, that has made no profit, and has continually went down? Somebody say common sense is knocking on the door. God even said you've got to invest in things that are blessed. And not everything that looks blessed is blessed. Bishop Jakes, you make me feel good when you preach, but are you blessed? Pastor Jesse Plymouth, I know you've given away 15 airplanes, but are you really blessed? Is the blessing of the Lord on your life? Where does the blessing come from? Remember we talked about tithe and in Deuteronomy chapter 28. If the blessing that's in Deuteronomy 28 is upon their life because they're in alignment with God's will, then whatever I do to them, they become a mirror. He said, in blessing I will bless thee. In cursing, I will curse thee. You may not like a blessed person, but don't dare talk about them because they are a mirror. Whatever you do to them becomes, just bounces right back to you. So you have to be careful in that. We have to understand that need is the responsibility of the church. Somebody say, it's my responsibility. Orphans, widows, the abandoned, inmates, trying to get back on course. All those things are our responsibility. And we are required to bless those areas. But if you're looking for a harvest to come off your giving, you can only invest in areas that are going up, not in the things that are going down. That's a side note. I don't want you to ever get hung up on that because you're missing the entire point of who God is. God said, I want to be a blessing to you and make your name so great that all the nations of the world are affected by your